Hello, my name is Dolan Mosley, and my Reckonica project was hooded pitcher plant restoration. Restoration efforts were focused on the Roadtown Tract in Alapaha, Georgia. It is just east of Alapaha City Center and is on the northern side of Giddens Road. It is owned and managed by Heather Brazel and is a parcel of 394 acres out of a total of 2,300 acres owned by Ms. Brazel. Ms. Brazel herself is from New Zealand, where she moved to Australia and into the United States as a teacher. And then she got her forest degree here at ABAC and took over for her husband in managing the lands in Alapaha. She mixes conservation with her silvicultural practices and keeps an early successional habitat on her property by keeping control of invasive and exotic plants as well as using prescribed fire. She also is a well-known figure in Alapaha and Tifton because of the many different public outreach programs that she has. With ABAC, for example, she does the weed wrangle at the GMA, as well as in Alapaha, she does the Day in the Woods, where different conservation organizations like the Bobwhite Quail Initiative, the Longleaf Alliance, and even the Wildlife Society here at ABAC go to educate the public on conservation and how the public can participate in conservation efforts. One way to show how good she is at this is that she received the Tree Farm of the Year award in 2023 and is always looking to further her knowledge both in wildlife conservation and timber management by going to different programs to further her knowledge. Communication-wise, we communicated mostly through phone calls to meet up first, and she could show me the different areas that would have the pitcher plants as well as where she wanted me to focus most of my efforts. Information was also sent through email. For example, from her, she sent me previously found hooded pitcher plant coordinates so that I could start my restoration efforts there. And I also emailed her the coordinates of hooded pitcher plant individuals that I had found. And I also, through email, sent her the brochure that I was working on so that she could look it over, as well as provide any edits that she had to improve it. You might ask why I chose hooded pitcher plants for my restoration project, as they're not a protected plant, but they are a rare wetland plant that I think is a good show to get people to think more about wetlands and wetland plants, as it is a very showy plant with very showy flowers that I think a lot of people don't know about, as it is a carnivorous plant, which are usually fairly inconspicuous plants. Wetland plants in general are more concerned as wetland degradation and fragmentation is a big problem throughout the United States, but especially here in Georgia where we have a lot of wetlands because of our low altitude. And sometimes vegetation removal by hand is really the only way to restore areas, especially with sensitive plants like pitcher plants, because herbicide could harm them and is also kind of hard to apply prescribed fire, as wetlands sometimes don't have the proper ground cover, such as grasses and forbs, to carry that fire through the wetter areas of wetlands. Prescribed fire is the historic way that wetlands kind of control themselves to allow the wetland plants to prosper by opening the canopy and allowing access to the sunlight that they need. It also burns away competition around things like pitcher plants so that they don't have to compete for the nutrients that they need. Fire also doesn't really affect pitcher plants as much as the woody plants because they propagate through rhizomes as well as seeds. Dead plant material of the pitcher plant is also taken away so that nutrients gathered by the plants aren't sent to useless parts of the plant. Pitcher plants, while not an integral part of the ecosystem, do control bug populations, which can in turn control insect-borne diseases. Scientists and researchers can also use the plant, cut open inside the plant to see the insects that are being in there and see the presence of certain insects as well as the abundance and density of those insects. The plants use these insects that they catch as a source of nitrogen, which is a limiting factor in wetlands because of the leaching of nutrients, because of the amount of water in those habitats. These plants can also be an indicator of a healthy wetland habitat because it shows that the understory is being kept in check and allowing the sunlight to hit the more sensitive plants in these types of habitats. Plants can also be a source of food and cover for different amphibians as the plants produce a smell that insects are attracted to and therefore can provide a source of food for the amphibians. The restorative activities that I used were uh, first off, I was looking to the previous GPS points that were made by Heather Brazel, and I started there, as well as marking new GPS points where I found new individual hooded pitcher plants. First, I did mechanical removal of vegetation around the pitcher plants in about a 3 foot radius. This should give them enough free room that they don't have as much competition, as well as letting sunlight come to where they can prosper very well. I also walked around individual pitcher plants in a radius of about a quarter acre, as that should be sufficient enough that you find any other individuals that were propagated by that original individual, as they propagate by rhizomes, which would mean that they wouldn't spread very far, and the seeds themselves don't spread very far because of the way the flowers work, and they usually are falling out fairly close to the plant. The materials I used were obviously loppers and hand shears for the vegetation removal, as well as rubber boots or galoshes because of how much water was on the wetlands. I also used a GPS unit to mark the areas that I had my restoration efforts at. I also used Microsoft Word to create the brochure, as I had a very good template for brochure, cutting the paper in thirds, as well as providing spaces for different graphics and information to educate the reader. I also used Google Earth as a way to better navigate and access the property before going there. Some difficulties that I ran into is that, for one, I didn't feel comfortable using herbicide because I didn't want it affecting the pitcher plants. Uh, some herbicides are more targeted towards woody plants, but they can also affect herbaceous plants. So I didn't really want to use something like a mazipeter that does that because it does go into the soil and could detrimentally affect the plants. And even if you know where they are, they can still be kind of hard to find. They can be hidden by the woody vegetation, even covered by water, or just missed because they aren't having those showy flowers just yet. I could have easily missed individual plants because of this. And also, the restorative efforts, while very good for the plants, don't last very long and will need to be taken care of in a repetitive manner. Wetlands are also rather hard and slow to restore, as it can take centuries to form and only a couple days to years to degrade and fragment. As to the public outreach, it's a very good thing to do because people have a lot of misconceptions about carnivorous plants, as well as that they don't really know how beautiful they can be. Me, for example, I didn't know that pitcher plants themselves, both yellow and hooded pitcher plants, had such showy flowers that I was really surprised by. It can also inform people that the danger the carnivorous plants are in, as well as the wetlands themselves being degraded and fragmented, which is something the general public doesn't really know about. And it can also instill a conviction in the public to go into other public outreach or volunteer for wetland preservation. Future actions that could be done to further this restoration project are wetland restoration to allow more prescribed fire in these areas. Stuff you could do is planting more grasses and forbs, winter disking to promote more forbs, as well as spread warm season grasses that will help the spread of prescribed fire in wetter areas. You can also do seed gathering of hooded pitcher plant individuals and spread those seeds into other areas where they aren't at. Because pitcher plants don't like transplanting, you can spread the seed instead of transplanting propagated individuals. You can also map out other populations at other wetlands to make sure you know where to focus your efforts so that you're not putting manpower in places where they aren't. You can also further restoration around the individuals that you've already done vegetation removal, as it doesn't take super long for that vegetation to grow back and crowd those plants again. And that's it. Thank you.